What's up, traders? Welcome to the Day Trading Show. Today, we have a very, very interesting, compelling, captivating interview. We're going to sit down, me and Tom, with words of wisdom. A lot of you guys know Riz. He's very popular on Twitter right now, blowing up with his podcast. So we sit down with him today to talk about his upbringing, his background with AstroFX, his experience working there, fatherhood, trading strategies. We cover a lot. It's a really good interview. Probably could have been another hour. So make sure you guys are paying attention. I want to let everybody know we are still accepting enrollment in the Black Shirt Club. If you're looking for private mentorship with 3 funded full-time traders, hit the link in the description, book a free call with me, or go to asfx.biz/BSC for Black Shirt Club. Like I said, book a call. Let's hop on for 10 minutes and see if you'd be a good fit. The workload is intense, but our results speak for themselves. You can go to our Trustpilot and see how the Black Shirt Club is helping traders not only get funded, but stay funded. We've had more traders than ever go full-time this year, and it could be you this year as well. So hit the link in the description. And without further ado, enjoy the conversation with Riz. All right, traders, what's going on? We have a very special guest here. I am joined by my co-host, Tom Jackson, of course, and our guest of the day, Mr. Riz. Words of Wisdom has joined us, and we're very excited for this episode. Riz is blowing up. Really. I mean, I don't say that to a lot of the guests because a lot of the guests that we've had are these like older traders. I know you saw Riz, like Lucci and Ranchero. These guys, they're on Instagram, they're on the internet, but they're not like actively trying to create the hottest marketing content like you are. High quality video production and sitting down with some really important traders. And a lot of what you've done, I think, has kind of set a new standard, bro, for traders and podcasts and stuff. So I applaud you on all that. And I'm really looking forward to chopping it up with you, hearing about how you got into trading, how you got into the podcast, all that stuff. So Riz, thank you for being here, man.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me and inviting me on, and an amazing introduction as well. I'm very humbled. Thank you.
Oh, of course, of course. Tom, how are you feeling, bro? How are things over there? It's funny, you both are not too far from each other. We just found out, right? That's pretty funny. Small world.
Yeah, we're literally just like a few miles away from each other. So yeah, it's interesting to meet all of these people. Like you say, small world when you think about it. So yeah, I'm good. I'm looking forward to interviewing Riz though, and getting to understand more about his background and the podcast scene that he's creating.
Definitely. And, you know, I had just like a vision in my mind where you and Riz become best friends, and you and now, like 6 months from now, he's not even trading. You get him sports gambling because that's what Tom used to do before he trade. You guys are out betting on horses on the weekend. We're like, where's Riz and Tom? And they're just hanging out, betting on sports and betting on soccer, betting on everything. So it's good to have another UK boy here. Are you originally from the UK, Riz? Is that where you're from, born and raised?
Yeah, so originally from here, originally from Nottingham as well. So like the city right next to Tom there as well. So originally from here, I just spent a little bit of time in London. I just recently came back.
Nice. And with your, well, why don't I open it up like this? Tell us about your background a little bit. Because like I said, when I was digging you, doing some research, it was a little tough to find. So educate me, the audience. Tell us, where are you coming from to get to this point now, running the podcast and trading? And yeah, just a little bit about your background.
100%. So I'm originally from Nottingham, which is like a small city near like Birmingham, which is probably a more well-known city here in
terrible soccer team. I'm sorry that Nottingham Forest is so bad. I feel for you because my team is bad this year too. So we're both in the same boat. All right.
I'm good. You know why it's good for me? I don't really, one of the only few British people probably who doesn't even watch football,
really?
Know much about football. Obviously, I know our team, they're not performing well. I hear it. That's what everyone talks about. So yeah, I'm sure there are other people who will listen to this and feel very offended by what you just said.
Right.
But I laugh at it, but I enjoy it though. I enjoy it. And, you know, I enjoy the culture here. And that's probably a big part of what shaped me as a person, to be fair, because coming from a place like this where, you know, there is a bit of a culture inside the city. It's quite a small place, so everyone kind of knows each other as well. Growing up, I always had a mindset of wanting to do something more. You know, I was talking on a podcast recently where I said about, you know, I wanted to, as a kid, for some reason, my vision being older was to be like a superhero. And I think that's like, you know, a kid's sort of dream, if you will, but essentially wanting to help people. And because of coming from a place like Nottingham and being quite small and everyone sort of knowing each other, I always had this vision. I used to live on a house, on a hill that looked over the city. And I remember at night and in the morning as well, I used to just look at the city and be like, one day I want to, make this city proud. I want to change this city, and help people in this city, and essentially have my name on this city, if you will. So, being from Nottingham, I think really just shaped my mind in a way, because normally you think like being from a bit of a smaller place in comparison to some of these major cities and capitals, if you will, people might see that as a negative, but in one way that was a positive for me to be able to have that sort of vision of having an impact on this city, if you will. So yeah. And in regards to my background then, so like getting into trading, I always had an entrepreneurship mindset. I always wanted to do something in regards to success and business. I just didn't know what. So my passion was entrepreneurship and business, but I just didn't know what. There wasn't like a niche off the back of that. So I kept trying different things as I was growing up. So I remember being in school, I was like selling sweets and chocolates in school, and I'd go to the cash and carry, which is like the Costco, if you will. So I'd go like to the Costco, get the bulk order in, and then I'd sell it. But I was a terrible businessman because I would eat and drink my own supply. So
you're getting high on the own supply, Riz. Come
pretty
on.
Much, yeah. Like I just remember going through all of my own produce. But yeah, selling there, I did quite well there. Well, I basically just paid for my own consumption, if you will. From there I did try to do like nights out, as in like a night out in Nottingham, like hire a nightclub, get some performers down. That didn't go well at all. I lost money on that. And then I tried to buy and sell fake DVDs from China, import fake DVDs from China. That did very well, except for the fact that it got shut down, obviously, because it's not allowed, it's not legal. Right. But for the 2 weekends I did do well. It was incredible. It was absolutely phenomenal. And
how long ago was that?
That was before Netflix, as you can
That's
imagine.
what I was going to say. This is going back. This is like you were bootlegging Blockbuster and stuff.
That's it, yeah. So we're talking probably about 10 years ago. Yeah, about 10 years ago. So probably Netflix was just trying to get onto the scene.
Yeah.
But these box sets, man, I tell you, they were flying.
Oh, I bet.
Because I'd get them for like £3 a box set, and I'd sell them for like £15, £20.
Oh my gosh. So the margins are crazy.
Yeah, but you know what happened? I messed up because I tried to do like a drop ship where before they came, I set them onto eBay, for example, and we sold them straight away, but then they never arrived. So then we had disputes, etc. So it was short lived. It was like the first like easy, quick money, if you will. But yeah, that was short lived. That was a good experience though. And then I was just working jobs. I was working jobs. I owned a corner shop at one point, like a liquor store, and that was because my dad used to own one, and he passed away when I was younger. And he passed away actually at his shop. And it was under like extreme circumstances in a sense. And I think that's what shaped me as well. And it shaped that decision because I thought, let me follow in his footsteps and get this shop. So essentially it still wasn't for me. It was in essence trying to do it for him. And that didn't work out too. I lost a lot of money on that shop. It taught me a lot about business. I used to always assume business was like, as soon as you have a business, you're free and you can do what you want and you can do, choose your hours and all that. When in reality, you actually have to do more hours. You're in charge of the stock, you're in charge of staff, and you have to pay these staff their wages. And so actually you have less freedom, if anything. So therefore that taught me a lot because I used to always perceive business on the positives only and not the negatives. So as soon as when I went through that experience, it really taught me about how you should really focus on both sides, of course, but more importantly, the negatives, if anything. So you're making an informed decision. But it was around that time that I actually, just when I got that shop, I think 1 month in is when I came across trading. So it was very interesting.
How did you find the trading? Did somebody come into the shop and was talking about it, or were you digging on your own, still looking for a hustle on the side?
No, luckily, actually, it was a unique one, to be fair, for the time, because we're talking about 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
And back then there wasn't as much on social media.
No, not at all.
And, not as many people trading, of course. Yeah. And it was actually one of my friends. So I used to work in a taxi rank, years before, and then years later, this friend of mine who I worked with, he suddenly had a better lifestyle. He'd invested in a business. He had a brand new car. He'd just gone like on holiday, and it was crazy. And he's a very humble guy, but you could just see that he had elevated. And I'd never normally ask someone, but because he's such a humble guy and such a nice guy, even to this day, the same. I literally bumped into him the other day, and yeah, I just asked him. I said, "What do you do? Like, we used to work together, and now you're here, and I'm still here. Like, what did you do?" And he said, "Oh, I trade Forex." And when he said those words, that magic word, should I say, it meant nothing to me at the time. It meant nothing. Gibberish. I didn't know what he meant. I said, "So what is that?" And he goes, as soon as he said this, he said, "Oh, I trade, like the pound against the yen. I trade against gold against the dollar." As soon as he said those combination of words, it sparked like literally straight away. I was like, I want to do that, right? didn't say anything about money. He didn't say anything about, it's easy or anything like that. He literally, all he said was the description of trading one asset against the other. And that was it for me. I was like, that's what I want to do. I love the sound of that. And I think I would really be good at that.
Yeah.
So then obviously at this point, you can imagine everyone was asking him what he did. So I was one of many, no doubt. So he sent me to Baby Pips first, because it was probably like a test of like, is this guy serious or not? So I actually went and I started reading Baby Pips, and I still got the screenshots on my phone, funnily enough, of just like pages of just Baby Pips, screenshots. And yeah, but I didn't understand it properly, because it's very terminology dense. So I didn't understand it properly. So I went back to him and said, hey man, I'm very interested, but I just can't get the sort of essence from Baby Pips there. Where did you learn? And he learned from a course called AstroFX here in the UK. They were situated in Birmingham. So, he was actually their 9th student, funnily enough. And wow. I think I was their 40th or 48th, something like that.
That's way back. That's like right when they started. Yeah.
Basically, it was just 2 guys in a very small office in Birmingham. Yeah. And I went and did that course. It was very expensive at the time.
Yep.
But I just believed in, look, he's done it. And, I've never done anything in regards to Forex. This is the first thing I find. And if I remember correctly, there was, off my memory, there was only 2 companies really, them and then Infinite Prosperity in Australia.
Yep.
Who are social. So,
bro, you're taking me back right now, bro, because like I started trading 8 years ago with IML. I got in with IML, but at the time, the Infinite Prosperity was another popular. I forget, they had that one dude, Johnny or something like that, who was like their marketing guy, right? And then Astro, of course, everybody knew of Astro.
Yeah, Johnny was like a student of theirs, and now he's doing phenomenally well as well. And I still keep up to date with his journey. That's where I came across him there.
Yeah,
and they had a few people there, and they were like, so in regards to the 2, like Infinite Prosperity were very the professional side, and I could tell the very professional side, very focused on teaching the right dynamics. While Astro had the sort of marketing, like the lifestyle, but they were teaching the basics, But at the time, I didn't know they were the basics, and I don't think anyone really would have assumed they were called basics either. Right. But yeah, that's where I started. I learned from them. That was my, how I learned about what a pip meant, what pairs were, and all of the basics. That's where I learned it. And I went away thinking, I could do this. Let me put £1,000 in an account. Funnily enough, it was actually a couple months later that Brexit took place. The vote, the vote for Brexit took place.
Great time to start trading.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that was my first trade. So my first trade was GU short, because I just.
Bro, didn't it drop like 1,000 pips during Brexit?
Yeah, this is why I shouldn't set a TP, but I did. But like for me, I don't know about you, Tom, but I had this like general sentiment that Brexit was going to go through. Like they were going to vote for Brexit for us to leave the EU. So I just thought, in my head, I was like, this is going to short, like 100%. That's the only thing I know, is that this will short, and I should short.
You're like a mini George Soros at this point, Riz.
Yeah, that's it. I wish, but my £1,000, I got like 40%, if you will. So I made £400 because I set a TP. If I didn't set a TP, who knows where that would have gone.
Right.
But regardless, that 40% became negative percent very quickly, as you can imagine. Within the space of maybe another 2 weeks, that account was gone. So that was like a very humbling experience, very quick reminder of like, because I had set myself like, this isn't going to be get rich quick. So I will give myself 1 year. That was my understanding, was 1 year wasn't quick.
It's funny though, because we think a year is a lot of time, but by the time we're all 50, we're gonna be like, oh, a year ain't shit. You know what I'm saying?
Even now, that's where I'm at now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Once you get in, I think once you're building that experience, you've actually stayed dedicated at something for a long period of time. You realize, and that's why, like, I'm sure you tell many people, and probably discuss on this podcast, and maybe students that you may have or anything like that. I'm sure you said the same, where like 1 year is nothing. 2 years maybe nothing, but yet as you say, we were those people where it was like 1 year, that's enough, 6 months, whatever it may be,
right? Because I think all good traders have a little bit of blind confidence in them. We're a little stubborn, we're a little bit, maybe a lot of bit hardworking, very determined, but that blind confidence of like, oh, it took Riz 3 years, I'll do it in a year and a half. Yeah, sure you will, buddy. Right. So that's very right. Exactly. That's very well said, bro. That's very well said. When you were in that process of like taking the Astro stuff, talking to all these people, you came into trading, it seems like very open-minded. Like you were like, I'll learn everything. I'll take everybody's course. And that's what I did. I took Tim Sykes's course, Cameron Foose, all these other guys. I took everybody's course. I was like, let me just absorb it all and then figure out what I'm going to do. Was that your perspective from the jump, or did that click because of that guy who was kind of guiding you?
It was a bit of a mixture, really, because like I would do the course and I would feel like, okay, I'm getting some information. Let's say with Astro, for example, But with Astro, they didn't ever put it together. Like, it was just like, here, use 5 or 6 confluences, and then that's your strategy. But that's not really, it's not a good teaching point in terms of like, there's no mechanical or entry drill or process. So that's why like Infinite Prosperity like really shouted out to me, because they had processes, they had focus on, the whole essence of the name, Infinite Prosperity. They had a formula behind it, and I really resonated with that formula because it was something that no one really talked about. Even to this day, people don't really put essence on financial foundations, and having the cash buffers, for example. So that they really resonated with me in that sense. And I really loved Lewis Mocker, even to this day, to be fair.
Lewis does well, bro. He does good marketing. For us to be talking about him, he must have done something right?
Yeah, 100%. And I really resonated with, his content and the way he would teach. And even to this day, like I said, he's amazing in terms of marketing, and even just being able to share how to package things, how to, grow an audience, or how to speak, how to speak, even just how to speak on camera, amazing skill sets that I learned even to this day. And so like that's what resonated with that. So really with courses, it was more like what resonated, because I did come across a load of courses that I looked at and I thought, no, this doesn't really resonate with me. Right. So really, to be fair to you, my friend didn't really guide me too much, and that I didn't really even ask him to be fair.
Sure.
But to be honest with you, with him, he started like trading, got the success in trading, and then instantly started investing into businesses and other things. So he didn't really have as much time in trading, at that point, because he'd already done what he wanted to do. Even to this day, he like dabbles in trading here and there, but just more focused on business.
He used it as like a step. For him, it was a step
and I think
to get
most
the capital.
Probably should do that,
I agree. Yeah. Do you find now, Riz, like there's a lot of people compared to when you got into it now around you that are trading? Like you and Tom are local, both traders, didn't even know each other till right now. Like the community in the UK must be exploding we hosted our big seminar last year in London, me and Tom, and it was our biggest seminar of the year. I do them in America here. We get like 15, 20 people. We did over 25 in London last year. So like, I feel like the UK has just been ahead of the curve when it comes to day trading, especially Forex. And now it's even bigger. It's still I think America, we're catching up, but it's just different. I don't know. Do you have an opinion on maybe why that is? Why has Forex been such a well-known thing in the UK and been pursued for so much longer than I feel like here?
Maybe multiple things. Like IML was a big thing here, and not just IML, but like multi-level marketing was a big thing here in general. So things like something called like ACN. There's something called like there was multiple of them.
I was in Vima for like a month, bro.
I was in Vima. I was just talking about this earlier. I went in Vima twice. That's how stupid I was. I went in there twice. I did it years ago, and then someone else brought it up, and I was like,
"You just have to one up everybody, Riz. You just got to. If everybody does IML once to figure out his bullshit, you had to do it twice just to make sure."
Honestly, it was crazy. That's the journey, But I think IML was a big one because they really got into the universities, getting the teenagers in,
Yes.
Lifestyle marketers is a big one. Like Astro, obviously, they were like the OGs, so they set a really big blueprint.
Are they still in business?
I don't think so. I don't think so anymore.
I never hear anything about them anymore.
Yeah, I think they might be still plodding along. I know they're separate. I think they're separated now, the two guys.
Okay.
And that was always going to come. I think
so too.
But
did they start their own prop firm? Did they have like a small firm going on, and then that disbanded as well?
So I used to work there. So years
really?
After course. Yeah. So years after doing their course, and I was still trying to find consistency, I ended up working there. It was like an opportunity that came up. It was after like some of the other guys left, BD, Tory, these guys left. Yeah. I just had a child. I was still trying to make trading work for me. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, sorry, but fortunately, I had this opportunity that came along. I guess it depends how you look at it. But fortunately, I had this opportunity to come along where Nat reached out to me and asked me if I was still living in London and wanted to work for them. I said no, because I wasn't living in London at the time. I just moved back to Nottingham because I just got married and I was expecting a child.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, look, I said no originally. And I just kept being on my mind. I kept thinking like, look, you want to trade. These guys are the top at the time. Obviously, I was like, these guys are the top guys. If you want to learn how to trade, what better opportunity than going to these, working with these guys, being around these guys, being around the top traders. So that was my mindset. So I kept thinking about it. So I said to my mom, I said to my wife, I said, look, I keep thinking about this, and I know it's the worst timing ever, about to have a kid, and they're in London, so either having to move or worse yet, having to commute every day. So I said, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I need to do it. They both said to me as well, go do it. Like, you want to trade? This is the best opportunity ever. We support you. So I went, it wasn't really an interview. I just had a chat with them, and they were like, yeah, come. And so I said, okay. You know, and they didn't pay me enough to move there. I did ask them. I did say, like, could you pay me enough, just a little bit extra, like £250, like $250 if you will, more, or $500 more, and I'll be able to move. Yeah, I won't be able to like live in a really like comfortable place, but I'll be able to move. It'll be easier for me. They said no. So I said okay. So I had to drive there every day, Monday to Friday, for 4 months. So it was like 6-7 hours, depending on traffic, 8 hours a day in the car. And
oh my God, bro.
You know, then doing like a 10 till 6 with us, 8-hour shift as well there. But
what were you doing? Yeah, what were you doing?
So the role was to write. Originally, it was meant to be like write articles, do like customer care, sales, of course, and you know, obviously trading. But back then, there was just a course, so really that was it. They had someone else who would do like the teaching of their course and stuff, so that was fine. So when I got there, it was quite quickly I realized it wasn't really a trading environment. You know, they actively said, like, you know, focus on sales, make money from that, and then you can trade. Really just hoping that you wouldn't ever, you know, you'd lose that passion for trading, etc. So anyway, I had that passion for trading. So I got there. I was a bit deflated about it, but I was like, at the end of the day, I had done like sales jobs before. You know, I know how businesses work. I've always been business minded. You know, I know about customer service. I was good at writing. I was good at making content. You know, I was always up for these things, you know, while they had hired other people who really weren't, you know, and had no sales experience, no, they weren't up for content. They couldn't write. So like, it was just, they struggled, those people, because they weren't trained either. It's not that they were provided training.
Right.
So yeah, that's where I started to really find my niche of helping people. In terms of trading wise, though, I was very lucky to come across someone called Rit online. So I used to trade GBP NZD, which no one really trades. Very volatile pair.
I used to trade that too, bro. My group used to say that
pair?
was my girlfriend. The GN was my girlfriend back in the day, bro.
Crazy girlfriend, mate. Crazy girlfriend. She's erratic.
Yeah,
even to this day.
That's what we like, though, bro. I know you and me, we're the same. We like it like that.
That's it. But yes, barely anyone traded it, right? So like I searched, this is how desperate I got. I searched the hashtag GBPNZD, and it just so happened I came across my mentor Rit, who has like a small group called Currency Lab, and I was like, this guy's killing it. You know, really clean charts, you know, consistently, you know, hitting TPs, and nothing to do with lifestyle. I don't think he even had his face on there. Literally, it was just charts. So I love that as well. And so I just messaged him and I started talking to him a bit. You know, I said, look, I trade GN as well. Not as good as you, but I trade it. And then I said to him, like, would you teach me? You know? And he was a bit reluctant because I worked at Astro, and I don't blame him because I don't think he was fond of them, and as many people weren't.
He felt like you were maybe a spy or something.
Something like that, yeah. And I, you know, fair play to him, but really managed to convince him, like, look, bro, I only came here to learn how to trade, and I'm not getting it here, so please teach me. And thankfully he did. And you know, I was his 9th student. So like when I joined him, there was only 10 people in there, even to this day, because he's never done marketing, never even like promoted, like come join me or anything like that. I think he's got like 120 students. And this is like 3.5 years ago, maybe coming up to 4 years now.
Wow.
So I've always, you know, loved and respected him. He really showed me the way in terms of not only trading, but also how to manage a community, how to run a community correctly. And while Astro, you know, one of the positives was that I learned how not to run a community, not how I don't want to be in this industry, you know? Yeah. But I was lucky there. The benefits of Astro was that I got to be on a platform for thousands of people worldwide, you know? I got to learn my essence of teaching. I did get to experience, you know, going on the private jet. You know, they took us all once, you know, for marketing purposes, but they took us on a private jet, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity. I got to be in Mayfair, you know, and be around actual hedge funds. They weren't a hedge fund, unfortunately, but
they had a rental office in the area around the other hedge funds.
Exactly, right? And I think, again, like, fair play to them, incredible, you know, mindset of doing that in terms of marketing. But you know, they could have done so much more with it, I think. But yeah, they ended up it ended up being a long story, but to make it shorter now, they ended up making 9 months into when I was there, 9 months roughly, they ended up making what they called a fund. They said that they had investors who, you know, were investing in Astro, and it turns out that it wasn't. It was basically like a B-book broker. And you know, once I found that out, I ended up leaving, and from there they went pretty much downhill from there.
Can you explain what that is? I'm undereducated. I know some of our listeners. What does that mean? B-book broker.
B-book broker, essentially. So, you know, there's A book and then B book. A book, they will put, you know, you'll deposit your money. It will actually get deposited. Your trades will actually go onto the live market, and, you know, you win or lose. You know, it's fair game. B book brokers, now, it doesn't necessarily mean that B books are bad, right? It just means that that's how they're set up. Meaning that if I put in 5K into a B-Book broker, they won't actually put 5K in. They'll put 5K into an account, but the trades themselves won't go onto the live market, right? They're essentially banking on the fact that majority of traders lose. Okay, so they're just collecting all this capital from all these traders, and in the confidence knowing that majority of these traders will lose. For those who will win, we'll be able to pay them from the losers. For those who do win, we will be able to put them onto the A-Book side, and actually put them on the live market side, copy their trade, etc., etc. Just like the prop industry.
Got it. Yeah, because I was just going to say, it sounds like a prop firm, but almost a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah. So like, they set up one of these. They set up, but they set up in a way where it wasn't like a prop firm. Unfortunately, they set it up in a bit more of a malicious way, a bit more of a, So with like a prop firm, they tell you, these are the rules. Yeah. These are what you have to do. It's a demo account. They tell you everything. They're upfront about it, right? Yeah. But these guys, they had this story of you got investors. Investors are investing in us guys as our name, and they're interested in our students because we're the best, etc. And that anyone who performs well, and to them, well wasn't 10% a month. They said anyone who could do anything above 4% a month on average. So knowing that you could have losing trades. So this was all the script, if you will. Yeah. But anything above 4% on average a month, at the end of the 12 months, if you've done that on average, you can have a 7-figure account, so up to 2 million.
Wow.
And a 6-figure salary. So that was the ploy, you see. That was the ploy. And
I mean, who wouldn't want that? That sounds beautiful. You're going to give me a funded account and a salary? Shit.
Exactly. And that's where the trickery, that was where it left a really sour taste in my mouth, because obviously I'm the guy who's selling it. They weren't selling it, right? Obviously they would market it, but they would have us selling it. Right. And obviously I would ask them questions. I did have my sort of reservations, but at the end of the day, I was seeing at this time, I wasn't as educated in terms of, it was because of this experience that I got more educated in terms of B-Book, etc. But I didn't know you could fake a live tag on MT4. I didn't know you could, have, essentially demo funds, but being perceived as live or shown as live. I didn't know about all this malicious stuff, behind the industry. So I had to take it as not gospel, but like, okay, at the end of the day, they're saying the right things. And then the MT4 is there, and they're apparently sending these documents to this other person at the broker, at the investor's broker, etc. But there were always red flags, always little things that really like, and I would constantly ask questions like about the job in particular. I'd be like, so 100%, these people do this, they're going to get a job, they'll get funded. Bear in mind, they tried to sell us accounts as the staff.
Even you're an employee.
Yeah. So and me as an employee, they tried to say, hey man, you get it at half price, because you're an employee. You just put 5K in, we'll give you a 50K account rather than 25K account. You trade that out, so that really...
That's throwing flags for sure, bro.
100%. Not only that, when I finally found out, because Nat sat me down. Remember I said earlier that someone they had people who would teach the course?
Yeah.
But at this point, these people had left. So they had no one to teach the course on their behalf. And at this point, I had started doing webinars off my own back, for these students. I had made a Telegram group off my own back for these students. So I was basically teaching and mentoring almost everyone. Like there were other people, the way it would work is if people joined, whoever they joined through was their mentor, right? So there were people joining, wanting me, but they were joining through someone else.
Right.
And so, I couldn't mentor them, but I would do webinars for everyone. And for me, like I never used their leads because I didn't need them. I was actually doing value. I was doing webinars. I was trying to teach people. At this point, my consistency was there thanks to RIT. But obviously, I couldn't promote RIT because I was
right because you're at Astro. Oh, that's confusing. Definitely confusing.
Exactly. So like RIT understood because obviously of the position I was in, he didn't mind, and he never because he's never like marketed at all. It didn't really bother him in any sense. I would send people to him though. I think
of course,
off my head, I've sent like 10, 15 people to him.
Of course, because it actually helped you. You're like, oh, I actually want this person, Tom. I want Tom to get some help. Go here, right?
Exactly. And I was being careful because at the end of the day, it was like, I didn't want to jeopardize or be that guy who's like doing sneaky stuff. So it was really when I had like a good relationship with someone who I knew their story and I knew that they, everyone obviously works hard, but some work harder than others. Some are dedicated. Some are really, trying to make this work.
You're a moral guy, so you feel like I should do right by them as best I can, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's why I was doing webinars anyway, because my whole essence of going there was like, I'm going to be the person that I didn't get. So like, there wasn't really doing webinars, there wasn't anyone sort of trying to answer questions. So that's why I purposely went out of my way to do that. A personal sacrifice, of course, in terms of time, but It was the least I could do because obviously people were paying a lot, so they needed this. They had to have this value.
Yeah.
Anyway, Nat sat me down once. When these people had left, and he wanted me to be that guy now. Be the one to teach the courses. But unfortunately, he told me about this is all B-book. He showed me an MT4 with 1 trillion in it. And I was like, that blew my mind in terms of like, that's mental. And he told me like, you can do anything. You can do Astro USD. You could do Riz USD as a pair. You can do anything with MT4. And it was in one sense it was like heartbreaking because obviously then I'd learned that essentially I'd sold people this dream.
Right. Everything is a lie. You're like, why?
So it's painful. Second thing that was really annoying to me was like I'd just worked for this guy for 18 months and not that he'd spent any time with me like one-to-one and got to know me, but really I would hope that he would know me enough to know that I wasn't of that caliber. I'm not the type of person to be like okay with this. Of course I'm going to sit there in front of him and say, oh, that sounds great, man. That sounds amazing.
But you're not going to stick by it.
Oh, exactly. So when I left, I went to Dubai for 2 weeks, literally booked it last minute, said to them, oh, I'm going to Dubai. They were like, wait, why? And I was like, no, just a holiday. I need time. And then when I was there, I was just planning, like, how am I going to leave? What am I going to do next? What am I going to do? All these people, what am I going to do about all these people who are going to be left behind? So that's where I made the plan to leave. I told them when I was there, because what they were trying to do, they were trying to send me a Rolex, a Hublot, sorry. For ages, they were trying to get me to buy a watch. They were trying to convince me that by buying a watch, people would respect me more. And I kept telling them, like people respect me already, so I don't know why I need a watch. Then, because that wouldn't work, that narrative, they were like, if you get a watch, I'll bring you into meetings. And in my head, I was like, why don't you just bring me into meetings anyway? Like,
right.
I don't need a watch. What is this? So anyway, I've never really cared about watches or cars or anything like that. So it didn't really work on me. But when I was there, they were like, look, we're going to send you this Hublot and you can pretend you bought it there. Right. And I was like, no, because I knew I was leaving as well. So I didn't want them to have this thing over me. The funny thing is, they were like, oh, we're going to buy you. For what ages they wanted me to buy one myself. But because I'm not bothered, I was like, no. Then they said, we'll buy you one. So what they started to do was like keep my bonuses or like my commission.
Oh my God. So you're buying it for yourself, but they're the one deciding that you're buying it. That's crazy.
Exactly, yeah.
That's crazy.
When they were there trying to be like, yo, we're going to send it you. I was like, no. So then I had to tell them, I was like, no, I'm going to leave. So don't send it me. I don't want it. And then they were trying to say, it was a bit of a shock to them, etc.
Riz, you're exposing my strategy. See that hoodie? I bought Tom that hoodie and I told him he has to wear that hoodie today.
That's it. But honestly, man, it's a wild ride. I know this ended up being a long story, but
no, it's okay because it's honestly, I think that people will relate to this a lot, bro. And personally,
I've never actually told the story like that. To be fair, I've always, I'm not into like exposing or anything. Like that.
No, I don't think we are. You're just speaking your truth. I don't think
exactly. That's how I've always said it. Like I always say the positive side of it, of course, but yeah, that's actually what happened. And when I left and I didn't do anything. When I left, I didn't expose them. It was on my heart, like I really wanted to, because I just felt really bad for not only the people who I got involved, but all these people who were still getting involved. Yeah. And I knew. And again, remember I said I wanted to be a superhero. So essentially, I'd just been tricked into being a villain.
You're a villain now, right?
Damn. Yeah. And I knew about a villain. So I was like, this isn't right. So anyway, I didn't do anything though. Because I didn't want to do the drama. I didn't do anything. I had gone away, had started my own. I told them to their face, I'm going to start my own education because I have my passion for it. And, I want to see how it goes. And they kept telling me, the grass isn't always greener. You won't last 6 months. People have tried, etc.
Because they were scared. They don't want competition. That's always what it is. They don't want to be competed against. That's it for any industry. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah. But I said to Nat's face, I said to him, and I said it then and I meant it then and I mean it now. If trading was to go to shit, if teaching was to go to shit, I would happily go back to working in a chicken shop, go back and mop floors. I don't care. I'm not of the, we're different people now. Like, you have this mindset of, needing to be famous and have followers and all this, and that's your identity. My identity isn't rooted in that. No. He didn't believe me, of course, but even to this day, if the podcast was to fail, if my trading was to fail, if everything was to fail, I'll go get a job because what else is there to do? I don't need to mop around. I don't need to be sulking about it. I'll go get a job,
Dude, it's so good to hear you say that because I think new traders need to hear that because we attach as traders our worth, our identity to our trading very easily, right? Just like it's easy to get wrapped up, like I want to be a trader and it gets wrapped up with you sitting at the desk all day. Nobody got into trading to sit at a desk all day. So it's very easy to get wrapped up into these things as a new trader. So it's good to hear, I'm sure for the listeners, to hear someone like you say, I'm not attached to this. This is one thing I do. It is not a definition of me. Another thing I would say, two quick things. One, I know we got to do a podcast. You got to have me come over there, Riz, and you can grill me up. But I'll tell you a quick story about myself because it's so similar to you, bro.
Are you in Miami?
I'm in Tampa, near Miami.
Well,
I could be in Miami.
I'm coming in June.
Okay. My son's going to be born in June, so maybe tentative. My wife might not let me leave.
In a few weeks, I'll be in New York. So, hey,
okay.
We'll make it happen.
We'll make it happen. Anyway, quick story, really quick. I worked for a prop firm in New York called T3. They taught me so much about teaching, streaming, marketing, a lot of different things. My trading improved there. So many valuable things, just like for you at Astro. It's like a parallel, bro. But at one point, my wife actually was the one that said, hey, I see how much money you're bringing into them. You're only getting a cut of that. We could do this on our own. And I've always been entrepreneurial, but she was the one that kicked me in the ass and said, like, let's really make this the real deal. So I can totally relate to what you're saying about working somewhere, not fully aligning with the beliefs, but knowing you're going to use that information for the future. Totally can relate to that. That was the first point. And second thing, I was just on this conference today with a guy named Anthony Crudele. Crudele is a well-known trader in the States. He worked in the pits back in the day. Like, he's had a lot of experience. One of the living legends for sure. He will be, if he's not already. He had a heart attack at the trading desk at 36 years old. That heart attack, he explained today in detail, was not induced by something going on. He went to the doctor that day, went to the hospital, nothing. They can't see anything on the inside of what's going on. It was stress induced. He explains it as he put himself in a position of living this lifestyle, multiple homes, cars, jet, all this, watches, all this stuff that actually stressed him out. It wasn't the trading. It wasn't anything else except his constructed reality that he built around all of that, the stress that he put on himself. So once he slimmed it, he calls it, I leaned it all out. Got lean. When he says that, he doesn't mean he was fat. He means he cut out all that extra stuff that was costing him money and he was spending money on. All the stress went away. So like, imagine the stress that those guys had to deal with at that time. You know what I mean? And what that does for you long-term versus going about building your business like you or me and Tom, where it's like, I'm not going to even tell you what kind of car I have. You know what kind of car I drive, Riz?
No.
Exactly. Like that's the step one of like, how are you going to build a business in the trading space? You know what I mean? Do you know his car and where he lives and all that? Or do you just know him for, wow, this dude, Austin and Riz, they post a lot of trading content, like a lot. So I just wanted to share those 2 points. Now I want to transition really quick away from Astro a little bit, because there is another thing that I definitely need to discuss with you. And that was great information, all of that, because it gives us a lot about your background. Talk to us about how the podcast came into play. Where did that idea come from in terms of the timeline? You just explained how you broke off from Astro, started your own thing, come back from Dubai. You don't get the free Hublot, thank God. And then where's the podcast come in?
Funnily enough, so it's good we went over the story so far, because it actually came in when I owned that shop, that liquor store. Yeah. I obviously would be there all day pretty much, because at one point I was doing all the hours there. And that's why I came across Joe Rogan. The first episode I ever listened to of Joe Rogan was Joe Rogan and Russell Brand, is it? Russell Brand, UK.
Of course.
That was the first episode I ever listened to. I think it was like his 300th episode. Now he's over 1,000.
He's almost at 2,000 now. It's crazy.
Yeah, so that's how long ago it was.
Yeah,
and that episode really shifted my mindset, because they were talking about perception of how you perceive things. And it seems so simple now when you think about it, but literally that was the first time I'd ever thought about how we can perceive things differently as individuals. And it really shaped my mind. It really, literally, I remember it was so profound. I was like I've never thought of that, And that's where the love for podcasting came, because I used to sit there in that shop and just listen to Joe Rogan over and over and over and over. And I just think like this, this is just amazing, just talking to people. And I even have a notebook from then, which is at home. And I used to use it for trading, business ideas. And in 2016 was like podcast idea. I was going to call it the Hope Dealers Podcast, to deal hope rather than dope. But yeah, but I made a list of people that I could.
Thanks for clarifying that one, bro.
I know. Yeah, I had the name and everything. I had the guests. I even Nat was on there. Sean was on there, because they were people I looked up to, and local people from who I knew from school who had started businesses. And I had all these names and everything. But I just, in my head, I convinced myself that I needed to have my own studio and have these thousands of equipment. So I can't do it yet. So that's why I didn't do it. I didn't do it because of that. And then years went by and I got to Astro. And at Astro, I told Nat, you should do a podcast. You got money. You got this, amazing Mayfair thing. You should do a podcast. No, that's not. We're focused on courses. Whatever. I was like, okay. But then, because what I realized there, which was interesting, is that when I was there, I kept telling them ideas. You should do this, or how about this? And they wouldn't care. They probably thought, like, who's this kid? Like, stop talking to us. Well, what I did realize was if I did stuff by myself, they wouldn't say anything, because if it worked, obviously they wouldn't say anything because it was beneficial for them. But if it didn't work, then they'd probably say anything. They would say something. But because I believed in myself and I believed what I would be doing was of value. So like the webinars, I just started doing them and they worked.
Right.
So I actually started then. That's when I started a YouTube channel. That's when I started putting out like mindset videos. And that's when I started Words of Wisdom. So if you look at the first 5 episodes of Words of Wisdom, they're in the basement of...
that's where that is? Because, I went on your channel. I went back to your first video. Okay, so that's what that is. That's crazy, bro. That's so funny.
Yeah. So that's where, I'm just sat there. There's one camera. You're with the camera guy, Ned. And there's me. And I think the first episode is with Joe, who worked with me at Astro, who now doesn't work at Astro as well, doing phenomenally well with fundamentals. Nice. And works in big firms and tech firms, etc. Incredible. But yeah, the first like 5 or 6 episodes were there because now I had access to someone who could record it for me and edit it for me, and and I had the microphones and stuff. So I just, because that passion was there even before trading, it never left. So now I had an opportunity to try it. So I did it, and then I left there, and obviously I didn't have access to that equipment no more, or that editor anymore. So then there was a little pause, a little break between. But I was doing YouTube videos, and I've always loved value. I've always wanted to provide value. That's the whole essence of the podcast as well. So I was doing YouTube videos, and top 3 mistakes traders make, case studies of trades that I would take and stuff. But I just, not that I didn't enjoy them, but they were just mundane. Everyone does them as well. And
it's crazy. Riz, I don't mean to cut you off, bro. It's crazy how similar we are. Like from the upcoming story, Tom, doesn't it sound like, and that's why I don't do those videos anymore, and why we just do the podcast now. Like, it's crazy how similar we are, bro.
It's true though, but like it's good to hear, because it's like the good people always end up coming together, I think.
The cream rises to the top, or what do they say, right? Something like that.
That's it. And I think there was, for too long, there was maybe not always bad people, but a certain viewpoint of how you should look or be to be an educator or to be someone of value. Do
you think that was rooted in IML a little bit, like them being marketers first over traders, that it's like that mindset trickled into everything after that a little bit?
I think, yeah, maybe that, as alongside obviously people like Astro and people similar, where there was a lot of focus on image,
right,
rather than the content
value.
Or
image over value. Yeah.
So I think, but IML probably may have started that, or really like shown there was success in that.
Like you were a good trader in IML if you had fancy shoes and a nice blazer. It had nothing to do with what your P&L was. It's like, did you have the right loafers?
Exactly. Yeah. So after I'd left, I was doing those videos, and I was doing them, and they're doing okay. Channel didn't grow too much.
Exactly. Yep. Same.
But like I never did script work though. Even at Astro, I never liked scripts. Like,
me neither.
The guys there, like Nat, for example, he would need a script. He would need to really, think about. Yeah. I remember seeing the camera guy with like a script stapled to his chest.
Wow. That surprises me. They pulled that off good, because I remember like thinking once, like they're good off the cuff, but that just shows you they ain't off the cuff all the time. It's scripted. No.
I don't know about Sean. I to be honest with you, I've never really given my opinion on Sean, for the main reason that he wasn't there. He was there. I met him maybe 4 or 5 times.
Really?
I've not got an opinion of him in terms of being as a person. Obviously, I don't like the fact that he knowingly knew about the Astro thing, the fund.
Yep.
So there's that bit. So I never say that I like him or I dislike him. I don't care. I've never given my opinion of him as a trader, for example, because it's not my place to, because I never saw.
Me neither.
But same with the content. I never saw if he had a script or not, so I can't say. But now I saw he would use a script, and I used to think it was crazy too, because I'd be like, because I used to obviously watch their content before, and I used to be like, oh, now I can see through.
You see through the veil. You see the Wizard of Oz, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But that's the thing. So that's what it really taught me. Like, unless you really are here. So when I left and people, there was a bit of drama and people would hate on me, like because they were big Astro fans, I would never say anything. All I would say is go work there. Just go get a job there or go be a student there, and you'll
really drink the Kool-Aid yourself and let me know. Yeah,
exactly. And that's enough. Like, I never need to convince anyone on anything. For me, it's all about intention. So like, that's why it came down to the podcast. Same thing. Like, podcasts I love because they're real. You can't fake a podcast. You can't fake a 2-hour conversation. If you're full of shit,
people will hear it in that 2-hour conversation. The same reason certain people don't do podcasts. I've asked certain people, I won't say their names because that's not right, but they don't want to be on a podcast. And it makes me wonder, do you really know what you're talking about? Or are you afraid to just get a question and you not know? Which
exactly.
is, yeah.
100%. I've had the same where people have turned me down. And I think it's the exact same reason, the exact same reason, because they make content. They make YouTube, they're big YouTubers.
We see your marketing. We see you out there marketing.
But it's like, okay, so I'm guessing a lot of that is scripted, a lot of that is planned, and you thought that out a lot, and therefore when it comes to a podcast, you're a bit scared that you might slip up. Not maybe everyone. I know some people just don't like it.
No, for sure.
I respect the ones who aren't on social media and say no, because obviously they're not on social media. So.
100%. That makes sense. I would never think that of that person. But the guy who's creating his own content, why don't you want more eyes?
That's it.
Last question about Astro. Did you ever read Sean's book?
I did, used to go. I love that book. This is the thing. That's what disappointed me about Sean. Yeah, I'll say it up to this day. Like Sean, when I left, he threatened me, tried to send me a voice note threatening me. And I literally, my reply was, Sean, you don't know me. Like, why would you threaten me when you haven't, I've worked for you for 18 months. I've made you a shit ton of money, right? Which I feel bad about. But if you want to be honest, I made you guys the most money out of everyone else, right? And I've never complained. I've never said anything about you. And so why are you threatening me? And then that was it. Then he blocked me, and that was the end of that.
Yep.
But the reason why I was so disappointed in Sean is because of that book, right? Because Sean wrote that book, and that book is incredible. It's got so much valuable information in terms of the mindset, in terms of being woke, if you will, being behind the
old definition of woke, not the new definition of woke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the old definition.
Yeah.
And that book has got references to everything that is put in there, evidence, links in the back of the book. So it took time to do that. And that's what I fell in love with. That's what drew me to Astro, was because of that book. And I was along those lines anyway before I was a trader. So that kind of went hand in hand. And that's why I respected him so much, because I was like, look at this book, it's everything that I've been thinking, but with evidence.
Right.
And so I love that book. And then, that's what was so, not heartbreaking, but so disappointing, because I was like, this guy who had this mindset was willing to sell that soul and that mindset out just for some easy money, and that's what was disappointing for it. And to this day, like I said, I hope people change. I think anyone can change. And I know that he's back on doing content and stuff. So I hope he has changed, but who knows?
It's just people like him, bro. I think he's a smart guy. I don't know him. I've only spoken to him in the DM a couple of times, never met, never spoke, I don't interact with internet beef. So I never would get in when they would be beefing with people, because I figured half the time it was just more marketing. Like they called the guy that they were going to beef with, and then they scheduled the fight,
No.
So I always was a little skeptical, but I totally understand what you're saying about there was real, you could see there was real work done somewhere, but then there's not real work being done in other areas. And that, I think, we both have had experiences, Tom as well. We've all had experiences where you go into it and you think it's going to be one thing, but it ends up being something else. Where I think where guys like us three are a little different, and I hope people listening take this, we are able to discern, hey, this isn't what I'm about, but I'm still going to take value from this. What to do, but more importantly, what not to do, right? You learned a lot at Astro at what not to do when it comes to building your brand and building your business, right? Probably more than what to do, correct?
100%. No, 100%. I learned way more what not to do. And, but I had the blessing of being in front of these, this audience,
Yeah.
And so, there was a blessing. I always say it. I always say there's positives and negatives to every situation, and you just have to look for them,
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
One thing for me in terms of, not just them, generally, as a red flag, if you will, is if someone is really promoting alcohol and drugs, and they're very casual about it, it's not good, because no one, as a trader, let alone a business person or generally as a human being, you cannot progress and make progress in your life and to hold value and knowledge and to have longevity if that is the culture you're promoting, right?
100%.
It was the part of the trick, you see, to convince others that this is cool and this is the way that trading is, and this is the lifestyle.
Just like in high school, bro. You're not going to drink this. You're not going to smoke this. Loser.
Yeah, exactly. So then, not to say that I drank when I was there, and I smoked some weed when I was there, 100%. Right,
course.
And I've said that before. But luckily, I've cut it all out of my life now, because I just recognized that, not that it's completely bad for you, but for me anyway, I just found that if I want to be the best version of myself, if I want to have the most clarity of mind, if I want to be able to progress, I need to cut this stuff out so I can have that. And then, not to say that I drank when I was there, and I smoked some weed when I was there, 100%. Right, and I've said that before. But luckily, I've cut it all out of my life now, because I just recognized that, not that it's completely bad for you, but for me anyway, if I want to have the most clarity of mind, if I want to be able to progress, I need to cut this stuff out so I can have that. And if I want to do it later when I've made my millions and gotten to the successful place I want to be in, then I'll do that because I can afford to do that. But I can't afford to do it now because I want to progress. And I know that if I drink or if I smoke, I can't trade for at least 3 to 4 days after if I want to have clear mind, right? So that's a whole trading week gone. And then what? Then you're back at the weekend, you might drink again. That's a whole, basically, how are you going to trade?
It's a cycle of keeping yourself from your goals. That's really what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are people out, not to say that no one can do these things.
No, I mean, like, there's a lot of people that everybody's different. I agree, but you got to know yourself. You figured out for you what works, you know, and you interact with a lot of, how old are you, Riz? Can I ask you?
I'm 27, about to be 28. Yeah.
So I'm 28. So we see some of these guys. I know you interact with like Paladin and these young guys on Twitter. And I see, and like Omar's been on the podcast twice. Like these young guys, bro, like they need to take, even if they're 6-7 years younger, that's it. They can take a lot from our habits because when we were their age, we were doing all that stupid stuff, right? Like you were tweeting yesterday about like no OnlyFans, no what, like you remember that, like that, no alcohol, no weed, no drugs. To me, it's like, how bad do you want it? You know, I think if you want something bad enough, you're going to put yourself in that position to succeed, not intentionally put, like in Mario Kart when you're driving, don't throw bananas in front of yourself, right? Yeah. Like don't intentionally slow yourself down. So let me ask you another question. This has been really great, Riz. Tom, do you have any questions? Because I'm like hogging the microphone here.
Yeah, so I have. I've listened quite intently. And for me, there's one thing that sticks out across like your entire story or your background. And the thing that resonates is like community. You started talking about like Nottingham and like you've mentioned like your family, and then you like, it sounded like you were seeking a mentor. You were in that place where you wanted to find somebody that could help you on this path. And then you've then gone and set up your own community. So what is it like for the listeners? What is it about that community that can help their trading, and why is it so important to you to build a community to help traders?
100%. So like I'll answer the second question first, and then I'll move on to the first. So like for me, why it's so important, I think, as I mentioned, like my dad passed away when I was younger, and when I was 5 years old. And you know, growing up, I have 2 sisters, and then I have my mom. And because of the circumstances that my dad passed away with, you know, we had to distance ourselves from everyone, all family members, right? So like I had no male cousins, no uncles, no grandfather. You know, all my grandparents have passed away at this point as well. And yeah, so like I had no male role model. Now my mom did incredibly well, so nothing to take away from my mom. She gave me, you know, I didn't really miss out in anything, even in terms of like advice or anything. But at the end of the day, a woman cannot teach a man to be a man, right? She can try, but she won't understand, right? And that's no one's fault. That's just the reality of the world. So like I was fine. I didn't feel any different. I always convinced myself like, hey, I've lived a normal life. Yes, I've not had a father, but I've lived an absolutely normal life. And you know, I'm just normal. I'm the same as everyone else. But as I hit like 16, 17, I just went through depression. Like it must have hit me then. I feel like I must have subconsciously put things behind a barrier. And the barrier can only last so long. And when enough pressure is applied, then cracks will start to show, and cracks started to show. And I went through a major, I say major, I can't remember how long exactly it was, but a decent period of time of depression where I'd wake up and just feel sad and down. And all my thoughts would be in regards to, you don't have a male role model. You don't have a father. You don't know what it's like to be a man. You don't know how to speak to girls. No one's taught you how to shave. No one's taught you, what you need to do or how you need to be. So I'd second guess myself. I would assume as well, because my dad passed away when I was younger, under those circumstances, I would always subconsciously and consciously think and assume that I would pass away when I was young or under similar circumstances. So then I'm thinking about, you don't know what it's like to be a man. You don't know how to speak to girls either. So how are you ever going to find a wife? And you're going to die when you're young. So, what's the point of finding a wife? I'm having all these crazy thoughts. I'm watching things like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air episode where his dad comes on the scene and then he leaves. And then he has that sad moment and that moment with Uncle Phil, and it's bringing me to tears, this scene. I'm watching the scene where where Carlton gets shot. Will gets shot and takes a bullet for Carlton. And Carlton comes in with a gun to the hospital. And they have that really emotional scene. That's bringing me to tears. I'm watching The Lion King. That's like the story of my life. That's what I've always said anyway, because it's the exact same circumstances. My dad was murdered by his brother-in-law. So obviously, Mufasa and Scar, the exact same story. So I'm watching this film and I'm watching that moment where Mufasa's in the sky and he's saying, you've forgotten who you are. so you've forgotten me. And I'm literally picturing there in my head, my dad saying that to me, and that's literally me. And, it's making me so emotional. I'll be going to work, I'll be crying, I'll be stood in work. I'm meant to be taking calls and I'm crying, I'm trying to hide it and all that. And I'll be going to a bridge, at night, which is, it's like a walk bridge, it's like a river in Nottingham. And I'd be standing there, I'd be thinking in my head, like, what would it be like to jump into this water? I wouldn't actually do it. I wouldn't even stand onto the ledge or anything. I'd just be thinking in my head, like, I kept getting drawn to that bridge. Every night I'd go to that bridge and I'd just be listening to these songs, listening to these, watching these things, thinking these thoughts. And then one day I just decided, when I woke up one day, I was literally like, I don't want to feel this way no more. I'm not going to feel this way no more. And then it just switched. And I just completely went from one side to the other, and I didn't feel that way anymore. I didn't have those thoughts anymore. And no doubt there's probably still internal, even to this day, it's probably still subconscious work that needs to be done in terms of like the trauma of having that experience. But that's where the whole leadership thing came from, because it's like, I realized I didn't need a leader. Yeah, sure. I'm sure it'd be helpful, but I didn't need a leader in the terms of like, to become who I needed to be and who I wanted to become. I didn't need a leader. But that's where like the essence of wanting one. So like finding RIT, for example, and having a good community, for example. I always wanted to have, and RIT obviously is Asian as well. So I feel like there was this attachment to having an Asian male role model, because I missed that. So that's why I think RIT came in onto the scene and why it was so important for me to find one. But then equally, the opposite, obviously, for the first question was why it's so important to me to be a good leader and to promote to other people to find a good leader as well, because they're worth their weight in gold, and if you have the right one, it's so important. It's so important because they can teach you everything. They can help you with everything. Even to this day, like I remember literally 3-4 months ago, no, it was probably longer than that, to be fair now. I think maybe a year ago now, we're trying to transition my daughter to using the toilet rather than obviously nappies. So I literally, Rit's a big family man. I messaged him. I said, hey, Rit, man, I need your help. It's not trading related this time, right? But I need your help, man. What advice you got for me, And I even asked him actually as well, like, how do you balance the family life with trading? Because I'm struggling, man. I'm struggling. Like, my daughter wakes up at 8:30, and it's London, it's prime time. I need to trade, and and I called him and I said, hey, man, like, what advice you got for me? And he told me, like, bro, yeah, at the end of the day, your family first. That's why you trade, right? You don't trade. You don't trade for trading, you trade for your family, you trade for these other things. So if your family needs you, what goes first? And then that was an easy decision to make thereafter. So like, even to this day, I could call him now and ask him, like, if I need advice, and he would answer me, and I only paid him once 4 years ago. I paid him 4 years ago.
That's a good mentor, bro. That's a great mentor. Tom, you want to take on that? I mean, Riz, that was probably the best thing you've said in the whole podcast, bro. You gave me chills when you were saying how you didn't have a dad to teach you how to shave. And like, I got my son coming in June, bro. So it's like, fuck.
It's
no life.
It's an intricate,
It's raw. I appreciate it, especially like when you said like you trade to be family. I've got some stuff going on like literally today and yesterday, family related, and like that was it. And I'm so thankful for like Austin and like the things that we do that, like you say, you can drop that and say, right, look, trading's got to be put to the side today. And like I've got a young son and 6-7 months old. Austin's got one on the way, and it's like it just completely throws things out of the way. But it was amazing. Great answer. Such a great answer.
Such a great answer. Do you feel like now, Riz, with everything that you have going on, you feel like you want to have more kids?
I think I think basically I would. Well, I wouldn't. I don't know. It's a tough one.
Toughest question of the day. Does Riz want to hump?
I think I will. I think I will have at least one more, right?
Good.
At least one. At one point, I thought my vision was to have three children, right? Because I come from, I have 2 siblings, so there's 3 of us. So I always assumed, I want the same thing. Then I had one, and I realized what it really is about, and what it really takes, and how important it is, especially given my, that history of, worrying about how would I be a father if I didn't know who my father was, So I was worried about it. I was stressed about it. And everyone always talked about when they have a kid. I don't know about for you guys. Well, I know, Austin, yours is to come maybe, so we'll see. But everyone always used to talk about, or a lot of people used to talk about, like when they first saw their child, they were brought to tears and they had this overwhelming moment. And that didn't happen for me. So then I felt a little bit off because I felt like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's something wrong with me. I don't know.
Maybe I don't have a heart.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'm too cold because I am very, I think maybe because of what's happened to me in my life, I'm very emotionally, withdrawn, very numb. Yeah. Which can be very hard in a relationship because I'm very logical and literal rather than emotional. But,
and we know women tend to be a little bit more emotional than men.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. No, but the reason I asked you if you want to have more kids, bro, everybody listening to this at this point, I mean, of course, we're putting some new people onto your show from my audience, but a lot of people from your audience, hopefully, are here listening. Like, I'm a big believer that guys like you and Tom and me should have as many kids as possible. Not because we're making a good amount of money and we're doing well and we're going to keep making. When people listen to you, bro, and I think people feel the same way about me and Tom, and that's why they're here. Like I said, you can tell a leader, and not just a leader, like a good leader. Good leaders have to have more kids, bro. If we're going to fix the world, we need to be that role model that you never had, in a way, that blood role model. And I think like a lot of the problems we see around the world, you've been to Dubai, you've been to a place and you live in the UK, you live in and seen very different religions and different ways of running a society. The family unit is the foundation of everything. When that breaks down, the children start to think and do things a little bit. They don't always end up as good as you did, is what I'm trying to say. So I think like when I hear guys like you explain your story, explain your morals, see where you come from, I always say, however many kids you think you're having, add 1 or 2 more on there, bro, because the world needs kids from you. And they need kids that are brought up by guys like you, I think, and guys like me and Tom, because we're the ones that are going to be able to give them what we didn't have or what we know they need in both cases.
I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that a lot. And it means a lot. And, it's a funny thing you say that because, I can do this podcasting, I can do this, teaching and be a leader of a community. And, I can make this content. But when it comes to, fatherhood and being a father, it's like, I second guess myself. I feel like I'm not good enough or I don't do well enough. And, maybe I should do more, or I think everyone always should do more. Right. But it's a weird one because, I literally for years, I'm never around kids, because I was so withdrawn. Our family was so withdrawn. I was never around like cousins or like nephews or nieces or anything like that, And, my daughter was the first grandchild on both sides, so like there was no kids. I've never been around kids. So I was even to this day, I'm still weird around kids. Like my own child is different. But like, even if like, it's I don't know, like a family member or one of my in-laws sort of children or something, I'm still very strange around kids because I'm so withdrawn and I don't know what to do. So it's weird you say that because obviously, it's amazing for you to say that. And I like it. But then the reality for me in terms of my mindset, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know, like if, children are so delicate, and I feel like, like you said, I've gone through a journey, and I've gone through like being religious to not being religious to being religious again, from being completely stone cold sober to being, drinking or being addicted to weed to being off them again. And, these are things that some people might not even see that as mistakes or see that as bad or wrong or as an issue. But I just feel like, as a parent, my job is to do my best as much as possible up until they're around the age of 18 to 21, around that sort of age. And then just give them their independence, and then
hopefully at that point they're ready to fly. Hopefully, right. I wasn't around kids either, bro. I don't have the first baby I held was like 3 years ago. I've never changed a diaper. I've never done anything like that. So I can totally relate to what you're saying. And Tom and I spoke with a guy named Jake a couple of weeks ago on this podcast. Jake is a new father last couple of years as well. And Tom and Jake were both like connecting over this point of like, as a dad, especially, you're not going to always feel that tears of happiness when the kid is born. And if anything, Tom has been saying, and Jake was saying, like a year later, you're still not super connected to that baby. That baby's really connected to its mother. But like, especially as a man, I think our job is, and especially as a man who then has a son, your job is to teach him how to be a good 7 to 18-year-old, those ages. And when you teach them the lessons and the morals, and that's when the father is very important in those moments, because like you said, it sticks with you for life, bro. The fact that you think still today, I didn't have somebody teach me how to shave. Like, you don't want your kid, if you have a son, to grow up and be like, my dad didn't give me that time. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think it's actually, bro, even more to the point that you should have more kids because you went through what you did. You know the other side, just like with Astro. You know what you don't like, and that makes your business profitable, successful, and popular now. You learned what not to do, just like with your dad and your upbringing. You learned what not to do.
Yeah,
I am definitely going to remind you about having more kids in 6 months' time.
Hey, listen. We make enough money that we just hire somebody to change all the diapers. And then it's fine. Then I just gotta worry about humping. You know what I'm saying?
I was like, yeah, I would love twins. I really hope we have twins. Like first one, like twins would be great.
Yeah,
like, twins would be great. And we've had one now. Now I'm like, I am so glad we did not have twins. So glad we did not have twins.
That's so funny.
I'm gonna run the idea past my wife and see what she says.
That's so funny. No, listen, Riz, this has been amazing, bro. We got to wrap it here because we have another meeting in a few minutes. I can't thank you enough, bro. I really think we probably have to do another episode in a few months and talk more trading, maybe a little bit more about like that side of stuff. Cause this has just been really good for, I think, people to know your background, where you come from, why you are the way that you are, which is important for people to connect to you and your brand. If people know your story, they know your why, they know where you come from, they're going to be your lifelong fans, bro, because they can relate to it. Like you and me have such a similar story. I don't see us not being connected. Like I know what you've gone through in some situations. You know what I've gone through in a different way, of course, but like it's relatable. So I really appreciate you for being open and honest and sharing all the information today.
No, my pleasure, man. My pleasure. And, thank you for having me on. And it's like you said, like with a podcast, this is one thing I've learned, and I'll just wrap up very quickly for you, is that obviously you mentioned about talking about the podcast. So with the podcast, it was all about a legacy. I enjoy it, obviously, passion-wise. Conversations are incredible. I learned so much, but it's all about legacy. So like, I learned from losing my father that the legacy is the most important. So even though he wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, he was just a hard worker and a good person. So even after like 15 years of him passing away, 20 years even now, if I meet people who knew him, they'll say, he's such an incredible person, such a nice person, etc. And that's what taught me the power of legacy. So that's why this whole content thing and this whole podcast thing and being a leader is so important to me, because that's all that's going to be remembered, really. It doesn't matter how much money I make. It doesn't matter what car I have or the watches I have or anything. I don't even have any watches, right? But if I had any of these things, it doesn't matter, because all that's going to be remembered is exactly what I did and the impact that I had, right? And that's why the podcast is such a passion project for me. And I put everything on the line for it. I'm just loving the journey, and I think that's why it's worked, because I didn't have an intention of trying to be successful at it. I just had the intention of enjoying it. And I think that's for you. Yeah.
You did it for yourself, not for the money, not for the audience, not for anybody. You did it for what it will bring to you. There's an old Jewish proverb: every man should plant a tree, write a book, and have a son, because all three of those things outlive you. So it's the same thing, bro. I live by that same principle. And I think as I have more kids, and hopefully you'll have some more kids as we continue to grow, that legacy probably just becomes more of a factor in everything. You're like, oh my God, I just had another one. I'm getting older and this thing is just born. And it's like, this is going to be way longer than when I'm gone, when I'm dead. So it's like, what can we create that outlives us? I think that's a great way to operate and a great place to come from. But yeah, man, this has been fantastic. Again, I really appreciate it. I'm going to link to Twitter, to Instagram for you, everything down below. Anything exciting you have coming up June, July, August? I know you said you were traveling. Anything you want to share with the audience?
So no, just June. I'll be out at the FX Summit. I just confirmed that today. I'll have a podcast set up there. So I'll just be talking to everyone. I'll be talking to everyone. I'll be thankful to meet anyone as well. Thank you to all the support to everyone as well. That's the main thing. Like, at the end of the day, like we said, it's not about the money. It's not about anything, but the more people support, the more we can get bigger people on the podcast, the bigger the production can be. So like that's what I'm doing. I'm going to New York in a couple of weeks. I'm going to Dubai a couple of weeks after that. Then I'm going to Miami, and all for the podcast. Also, I can get to these guests.
Who are you sitting down with in New York?
Paladin, Omar, a guy called Kyle, which is a Jade Capital. One. This will come out when? Start of May.
This will be out beginning of May. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I would have recorded by then. So one funding talent lady, Jessica. So some very interesting conversation.
She knows my brother.
Does she?
My younger brother used to work for her. I connected the two of them. So Jessica and I know each other very well.
Oh, perfect. Yep. So the thing is, like with the podcast, it's not just about trading. Like it's about this industry. It's about stories most of all, which is so important. So even with Jessica, she felt a little bit reluctant, like agreeing to do it. But at the end of the day, it's a story. Everyone knows about funding talent. A lot of
people are gonna go nuts on that one.
That's it. Yeah. So it's about the story though. That's what I mean. So I don't have any malicious intent whenever I talk to anyone. Of course. Really, I like to just talk about what was it like, what was the intention behind, what was it about, what happened that impacted you, and stuff like that. So that should be a very interesting one, and yeah, I'm very excited for that, because again, it's the most of all, I'm excited to test myself in an interview like that. It's all well and good as talking about trading. It's quite easy to do because we've done it for so long, but doing an interview like that is very different. It's very delicate,
Right, because you're going to talk to her about her pain points, about the things that nobody is thinking about her as being like this gracious queen that was paying everybody out. So it's going to be a little bit awkward, but as a good interviewer, like look at, anybody that has become a well-known interviewer, from the lady, I don't know her name, that does 60 Minutes, like they ask the tough questions, bro. That is the point of being a podcast host. You've got to be willing to do that and get sweaty a little bit, get the hands sweaty.
That's it. Yeah, it happens, man. Honestly, it really does happen. And that's all it's about. So like to finish my point, I would just literally say anything that you do, whether you're trading, whether you're podcasting, making content, whether you want to get in real estate, you have to enjoy it. First of all, you have to just literally do it for the love of the art, the love of the actual industry itself, the actions that you do day to day. And then just try to be better at it. So when I first came into podcasting, I literally thought it was just you could jump on with some friends and drink and smoke and have a good time and laugh.
Like Joe Rogan.
Exactly, and people would watch it. But the reality is, like, one with Joe Rogan, he's a comedian. Yeah. So his friends are comedians. So it's easy for them to do that because then they can just give out jokes, right?
Right.
And his audience will obviously receive that. But I'm not a comedian. No one knows who I am, so why are they going to listen to me? So I had to listen to this. Like if you go back to like episode, like 8 or 9, that's what it was. It was me and my close friends who were traders, but we're just laughing and joking, trying to put out value through a conversation, but it doesn't work that way. So I've had to learn and grow. And that's the same thing that I would say to everyone. Anything you do, just realize you're just going to learn and grow as you go along. But make sure you do learn and grow as you go along.
Right. That's very well said, bro. I love that. Listen, if you can fit me in New York, bro, I'll fly up there for the day. We'll make it happen. You let me know.
We will, 100%. I'll message you straight after this. No problem.
Cool. All right, Riz, I'll let you go, bro. We got another meeting. We're going to have to chat again. So I'll be bothering you again. Definitely. We'll stay connected on Twitter, but thank you very much, bro. It's been great.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yep. See you later, Riz. Tom, thank you very much, bro, as always. And to the audience, we will see you guys in the next episode. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit the comments with what you want us to talk to Riz about next time, and we'll bring it all back for you guys. So we appreciate all the audience. We appreciate all the listeners, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.